Hey, welcome to this video about septic systems. My name is Connor Cushman. If you don't know who I am a North Georgia real estate investor and agent, an investor-friendly agent. My focus is short-term rentals, but I service residential home buyers and sellers. I personally have long-term rentals in the North Metro Atlanta area, as well as several short-term rentals across North Georgia, Tennessee, and the Florida Panhandle. So we're going to talk about septic systems in this video because it's a topic that comes up with a lot of clients and investors, particularly with North Georgia cabins, which is what I primarily sell to investors from all over the country. It's very common to purchase a property that has a septic tank as the method for waste management, right? Similarly, it's common to have wells, sometimes personal wells, sometimes shared wells with a neighbor, other times community wells. But we're going to focus this video on septic systems because it's more common and it comes up more during the due diligence and negotiation process. So I'm going to show you a few things. This isn't going to cover everything you need to know about septic systems, and it's also going to be looked at through the lens of a real estate agent and how I go about kind of assisting you as a client through the topic of septic systems based on my own experience. This is not to be taken as the only truth for septic systems, and you cannot hold me liable for any of this information. Of course, that goes without saying, especially if you're not a client. And if you are a client, we should be having multiple conversations about this, depending on the property you're purchasing. But all that to say, the purpose of this video is to help educate, give you some things to think about, talk to you about my process as an agent for assisting clients in understanding the septic system and what they're getting themselves into. And that'll be the scope of this video. So let's get into it. We find a property that we're interested in. This is just a sample property I found on the MLS. It's Ellijay, Georgia. I'm going to give you a quick bonus tip here. This is a quick way to scan for potential cash flow short-term rentals. I'm going to plug in this property, and I think it was a 3.5. We're going to fill this out, and the revenue projection is $48,000. So based off of this quick projection tool, I probably would move forward at this purchase price, but that's besides the point. Assuming the numbers did look a little better, closer to like 60, 70K for the revenue projection, I would consider making an offer and moving forward on this property. It's got some cool things about it. And assuming that was the case, I would know before going into that, either as the client or the agent. If the client doesn't catch it, I'm certainly catching it as the agent. I'm going to see that, okay, it's on public water, but it does have a septic tank. And so what we're going to do as we're structuring the offer, this is before we go under contract, we're going to try to understand what the condition of the septic tank is. This home was built in 99. So we want to figure out and assure ourselves before closing on this property that the septic tank has at least been pumped recently or gets a septic clearance letter prior to purchase. And again, when it comes time to work together as my client, we'll talk through this in more detail and make sure that you're comfortable and do all your own due diligence on this. But this is an overview of the process that I and the approach that I take here. So we figure out that it's got a septic tank. What I'm going to do is go into the listing on the MLS system. I'm going to go into the documents and I'm going to find what I can about this septic tank. So first and foremost, we're going to look at the seller's property disclosure statement. And this is where the seller fills out their information and shows me, tells me about the condition of the home and anything they know about the systems, the major systems. So here we see that they have, and it's very common, particularly in Georgia, for these seller disclosures to not be very helpful. And so this is not a foolproof plan for understanding the condition of the home, obviously, right? There's lots of detail missing here. And we can see that they've checked that there's a septic system, but there's no documentation that they have serviced the septic system during their ownership, which points me to looking at the sales history and it's not found in the county record, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. But what I would do in that situation is try to figure out, like, why is there not any detail here? Is that because they, this is an investor and they just bought the home 6 months ago, or have they owned this for 10 years and just never serviced the septic system? In that case, that's something to call out, dig into more, and really emphasize, the condition of the tank. Now, in some scenarios, it'll say, hey, this system was pumped and inspected. It's November of 2023. The system was inspected in July of 23. In that case, for me personally as an investor, I might say, you know what, that is sufficient. I'll just ask the seller for receipts for that service and be on my way. In fact, if it was within the last 2 years, I might be okay with that. My question at that point would be, is this an active short-term rental, or was this like an older couple that comes on the weekends? That's going to have a different level of impact on the septic system and maybe influence how much deeper I dig on the septic system versus maybe roll the dice and close without inspecting. And I'll get to the costs involved with inspecting and pumping. But again, if I see evidence that the property's been well taken care of, they provide receipts of service within the last, say, 24 months, I personally, as an investor, might feel okay moving forward through closing without getting my own inspection on the septic system. That, again, is not my recommendation to you. That's a personal choice. And my advice, obviously, as a real estate agent, is going to be to inspect everything if you have any concern. And it's ultimately on you to decide what you choose to inspect. And I have to be careful saying all of this because I could get in, someone could come after me. And so that's why you can tell I'm kind of dancing around the subject. But again, this is for purposes of kind of educating and giving different perspectives. I might compare inspections to like insurance. So for example, you could get the maximum coverage and lowest deductibles on your home insurance and your auto insurance and life. You could insure yourself, your life insurance for $10 million and your spouse, and you can get disability and you can insure your jewelry and all your toys and you can just insure your cell phone. So you could literally suck up your whole monthly income in insurance costs. But obviously we don't do that. We make decisions and we do kind of a cost benefit analysis when we're determining what insurance and what sort of premiums and deductibles we do. I think a similar principle applies to inspections. I could just tell you as the agent, like, make sure you inspect every system and component of the house, but there's also like common sense and kind of calculated risk and cost benefit analysis that you have to kind of decide. And so I can't do that for you as the agent. No one really can. And at the end of the day, it's on you to inspect and figure out the condition of the home with guidance from your inspector and your agent and the seller's disclosures, piecing that all together to make sure you feel comfortable closing on the home. So again, I say all that just to explain kind of my approach to septic inspections and the idea of like how I would think about that as a buyer. If there's no information here, what we're going to do, what I'm going to encourage my clients to do is when we write in the offer in the special stipulations, we're going to require that the seller provides a septic clearance letter. And at times we may also just go ahead and say that the seller has to pump the septic system prior to closing. So we're asking them to kind of ensure that, and my general understanding of this, and I'm not a septic company or expert, but my understanding is when they go to pump, and if you're also asking for a clearance letter, that's a pretty sure bet that if they successfully pump the system and they give you a clearance letter, that you're in the clear. There's really not much more you could do there. If you opt for just the pump, some septic companies will say, hey, we're not going to pump the system if there's an issue with the system. And so sometimes that alone can give you the assurance you need. If the seller is obligated to successfully pump the system prior to closing, you're by default also kind of ensuring that the system is coming in functioning order. So what I typically try to do is ask for a septic clearance letter in the special stipulations of the offer and get the seller to pay for that and provide that to us prior to closing. And so that way, you don't need to inspect the system yourself because you're getting a guarantee from the seller, so to speak, that the system is clear and functioning, and you'll get a report of the condition of the system. Now, you can take that further and you could inspect yourself. In the market that I'm in, specifically referencing kind of the North Georgia market, you're going to pay anywhere from a couple $100 to a few $100 to inspect. And often the difference in price between inspecting and then also pumping is not that much, maybe $100 or $200 at most. So some of the costs involved with inspecting the system have to do with if they have to dig to find the access. And so that's something to kind of have on your radar, is that, if the tank is underground, and it's common in Georgia for this to be the case, and if this is the seller's expense, great, they'll deal with that. But a lot of the times the septic systems don't have the proper height of risers and the kind of that green access cap that you might have seen if you're familiar with accessing septic systems. And so the one of the biggest expenses associated with inspecting the systems is the company actually having to dig and find the access point. And so that's something to be aware of too, if you're buying a property with a system that the sellers share with you, well, we had to dig and find it. You might negotiate that the sellers add some risers so that that's not a cost you incur moving forward as you're the owner of the house. So a little pro tip there. All that to say, though, too, that if you opt to inspect the septic system, you might be out a few $100. And so, and typically the scheduling a septic inspection in my markets takes a little longer than your standard home inspection. And so if you're dealing with a tight due diligence timeline, sometimes that can kind of cause some stress on your process. So you want to think about that ahead of time and maybe give yourself some extra room on the due diligence timeline. If you know that that's going to be a sticking point, something you're going to want to inspect. So that's the process. You might at times when you're inspecting a septic system feel inclined or obligated to just go ahead and pump because the delta in price is not that different. So that's something to keep in mind too. If you're pretty sure you're going to buy the property, sometimes it makes sense just to go ahead and do that. But again, what my goal is to try and protect my buyers from finding themselves in a situation where they inspect the system, they're running up on the end of due diligence, they find some big issues. And the reason why we're talking about septic systems is because when there is an issue, it can be very big and very expensive. So if you have an issue with the drain field lines, or you have to install a new system, you're talking about potentially $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, depending on the system and the situation, the elevation. You're dealing with potentially permits from the local health department and soil tests and different things like that. So it can be a very expensive issue. So it's one that people pay extra close attention to for good reason when thinking about inspections and the due diligence process. So hopefully that's helpful. I also pulled open a couple of interesting tabs here. One, in the state of Georgia, the minimum tank size is 1,000 gallons. A lot of times you can get the septic file from the county health department, and sometimes the sellers will provide this, and you can see the size of the tank. And depending on the county, you can usually see, the number of bedrooms that it's permitted for. So this one is 2. When it's permitted for 2, you can have in Georgia, and don't quote me on this, but this is my understanding, is that you can build, by code, you can have a 1 bedroom above what you're permitted for on the septic side. So that makes sense that this property is a 3 bedroom. So, again, I'm not claiming to be the super expert, but I know enough to be dangerous. And I think this video will be helpful for some who are a couple levels below me in terms of septic knowledge. And this is coming from just lots of transactions as a buyer and as an agent learning about these things. So you've got the septic file. That's something to take a look at. Usually you can get it from the local county health department for free, and just get an understanding of the size of the tank, what it's permitted for. Sometimes you'll find that you're looking at a property that's a 4 or 5 bedroom and the tank's only a 2 bedroom. And so from a from a resale value perspective, that's something that could hold you back. And from a permitting perspective, it's possible that the work done to add those additional bedrooms is out of code, so to speak. So not typically in the North Georgia market a situation where the local government's going to come and say tear down these other 2 bedrooms or anything like that, but something to just be aware of. Here is an interesting homeowners guide that I found from the state of Georgia, just about just more information about septic systems. And in particular, I thought this page was interesting, where it shows the estimated septic tank pumping frequency, kind of recommended pumping frequency. And you can see, like in this case, it was 1,000-gallon tank. Let's suppose that you are running an Airbnb with an occupancy of 6 to 8 people. It suggests pumping every 1 to 2 years. Your pump's going to cost a couple $100. So while you don't have a sewer bill, you might think about setting aside $30 to $50 a month for that, pump every year or 2, right? So similar maybe cost to the sewer bill. If you're running more of a second home, vacation home type of thing in the cabin, and or you have a bigger tank here, the pumping frequency goes down, right? So that's something to think about. This to find this link, you can go to the DPH. If you just kind of search this question here, Georgia Department of Public Health, homeowner's guide to septic systems, you probably find it. Some good info in there. And that is my overview of septic systems. If you are hunting for a cabin in the North Georgia market and you want someone that, if you appreciated kind of the approach I take to this topic, obviously very thorough, I take the same approach to all parts of the real estate investment process. Real estate purchase, if it's primary home, or investment, I think I have the same sort of knowledge and skill set and understanding of septic systems and wells and HVAC systems and roofs. I don't claim to be a home inspector or a septic installer, but I take a holistic approach to understanding real estate. I understand the financing side and the tax side and the management of Airbnbs, and I have a full vendor list, and everyone you need to be successful and hire the experts to handle all of these issues. So if that resonates with you, and you're watching this on YouTube or another platform, definitely connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn or YouTube. Reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you in the process. And again, my core responsibility and obligation is to negotiate for you as your realtor. But I try to provide a premium service in the way that I can maybe point you to, inspections or professionals, or, for example, the county health department pulling the septic permit and or thinking about the pump schedule. These are the kinds of things that I'm constantly researching, and I try to make sure that I give you every edge and every piece of kind of insight as possible to make sure you have a clear picture of what you're buying and how you're going to be successful with that. And I know that if I do that, you'll come back to me time and time again, recommend me to your friends. And so that's my approach to the business. So if this was helpful for you, give it a like. If you have additional questions, I don't claim to have a perfect understanding of septic systems, and this information is going to vary county by county, state by state, property by property. Every situation is a little bit unique and different, but hopefully this gives you some guiding principles or some approaches and strategies to think about. And stay connected. Let me know how I can help, and look out for other videos on other topics related to real estate. Subscribe, like the video, of course, and we will see you on the next video.